welcome to Mondays with Marlo. Well, a lot of you have been writing to me and asking if we could bring somebody to the table here that could answer sex questions that you have. We really looked around to find somebody who really knows what they're talking about, an expert, an author, a teacher, somebody who goes around the country and speaks to groups of women, and women get to ask questions. Some men too, I'm sure, come and ask questions. And so her name is Emily Nagoski, and she's written 3 fabulous books. One of them is called Guide to Female Orgasms. You can't get more clear than that. And then recently on the New York Times bestseller list is a book called Come As You Are, which I think there's a pun in there, the surprising new science that will transform your sex life. So I'm very excited about this because your questions are so direct, and I know you really need this half hour. So we'll get going right away with Emily, and welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm very excited about you, and I love your green hair.
Thank you.
It tells me right away that we're not dealing with anybody who's just some little prim teacher, but somebody who's really going to get in there with us.
Oh, yeah.
This is from Jessica, and she says, why is it so easy for my husband to have an orgasm and it takes me forever?
So there are a lot of different reasons. I get asked about orgasm. It might be the thing I get asked about most often, Jessica. So there's 2 things happening. The first is the actual mechanism in your brain that makes orgasm happen. There's 2 parts to it. It's called the dual control mechanism. The first part is the sexual accelerator, which is like a gas pedal that responds to all the sexy stimulation, and it says, go, turn on. But there's also a brake, which responds to all the very good reasons not to be turned on right now, and it sends a signal that says, turn off. So the process of getting to orgasm is a process both of turning on the ons with sexy stimulation and of turning off the offs.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So when you've got
Is that
this
like a distraction or a moral code is happening?
Yes, both of those things and a whole lot more. Everything as simple as I'm worried that the kids are going to knock on the door and interrupt us, to I'm feeling critical about my body and those thoughts are interfering with my ability to get aroused. So most people who struggle with orgasm, it's not about not having enough stimulation to the gas pedal. Sometimes it is, and if it's about stimulation to the gas pedal, vibrator is the quickest shortcut to orgasm for most people. But if it's not the accelerator, it's the brake, you figure out what it is that's hitting the brake. Is it simple concern about, like, is somebody going to walk in? Simple solution, like lock the door. For some people, there's actually this brain research, people trying to masturbate to orgasm in a brain imaging machine, and it turns out people could orgasm more easily in a brain imaging machine when they were wearing their socks. And you have to wonder why. Like, is there like a foot fetishist secret thing happening with brain research subjects? No, their feet were cold. They were distracted by that. Right. They put on socks and their feet are warmer. So sometimes the solutions are very simple.
Right.
So that's one thing, is what's hitting the brake. And the second part of it is that men, and there's a lot of variability, of course, but men tend to have more sensitive accelerators and less sensitive brakes. And women tend to have more sensitive brakes and less sensitive accelerators. So it takes more stimulation and more deliberate turning off of all those offs than it does for men. So it takes us longer to orgasm.
So one of the things we have to do probably is clear our mind.
Absolutely.
You know, don't go with your partner with, oh my God, I didn't do this and I should have called that and I didn't pick up the kids and I got to take the laundry. You got to get rid of all of that. It's kind of like a meditation.
It absolutely is. One of the most evidence-based interventions for improving sexual pleasure and sexual arousal is mindfulness meditation.
Yeah, that's great. That's exciting. This is from John. Hi, John. What is the biggest complaint you hear from women about men in bed? Well, John, we're going to tell you right now.
Yes. So with the book, I've been traveling all around the country. I've been to dozens of different cities, talked to literally thousands of women, and here is what women complain about, John. Men assume that women are supposed to work just the way men do, and it is different. Sexual arousal, the experience of sexual pleasure, is different for women than it is for men. Now, everybody varies tremendously, and for some proportion of women, I think 10 to 15%, their sexual response really is pretty similar to the traditional masculine model of sexuality, but for the rest of us...
What's the traditional model?
So the traditional model is you're sort of walking down the street and you have this spontaneous, out of the blue desire for sex. So that my illustrator for the book illustrates it as a lightning bolt to the genitals. Poof, you just want sex, all of the blue, and you're like, I would like to go get me some sex. And so you go and you find your partner and you experience pleasure and you have orgasm during intercourse, and that's it, boom, right? And it's easy. How it actually works for a surprising number of women is that pleasure is what comes first. So you're not really in the mood, you're like, okay, it's 8 o'clock on Friday night. We said we were gonna have a sexy time on Friday at 8 o'clock, so here we are. You get your body in the bed, you put your skin against your partner's skin, and your body goes, oh, right, I really like this. This is good. And desire emerges from the pleasure. And orgasm happens gradually as a buildup of the pleasure.
Right. That's a more female way.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is from Samantha. Oh, I love this one. What are 3 tips you can tell me on how to achieve an orgasm every time I have sex with my husband? Don't go to the refrigerator. This is it. What are 3 tips you can tell me on how to achieve an orgasm every time I have sex with my husband?
So this is a tricky question, because does have sex with my husband mean during intercourse? Only about 1/3 of women are reliably orgasmic from vaginal penetration alone. The remaining 2/3 are sometimes, rarely, or never orgasmic from vaginal stimulation alone. We need direct clitoral stimulation, all of us. So if we're talking about having orgasm during intercourse, the #1 tip is add clitoral stimulation. Your hand, your partner's hand, a sex toy that you hold, a sex toy that your partner holds, your partner's pubic bone grinding against your pubic bone, whatever it takes to add clitoral stimulation is what's going to increase the likelihood of orgasm during intercourse. Orgasm overall with your partner, there's this phenomenon called spectatoring, where instead of paying attention to the pleasurable things happening in your body, you're sort of watching yourself and thinking about the way your breasts are moving and the fat on your tummy and all the kind of, how does your face look and all the things. And is all of that increasing the pleasure and stimulation that you're having? That's the stuff that's hitting the brakes. Right. So tip #2 is notice that that's happening. Let those thoughts go temporarily and return your attention to the pleasurable sensations happening inside your body. And the third thing is to take away all expectation that you're going to have an orgasm, all expectation that your partner's going to have an orgasm, and it is just pleasure for as long as you are physically capable of experiencing pleasure.
Yeah.
Take the performance anxiety away.
Yeah, that's a very big one. I really enjoy having an orgasm, but I can't always achieve it. Are there any tips for how I can get there more often? So I think this is a very touching question, because it doesn't sound to me like she has a problem with sex. She really loves it. She's just slower than probably her partner is. So what would you say on tips on how she could get there more often? Because she seems to know how to get there, but it's taking her longer maybe. Do you think that's it?
I think it's that sometimes it's there for her and sometimes it's not, or sometimes it takes an amount of time. So we have this thing in our brain called, I call it the little monitor, that knows what your goal is. It knows how much effort you're investing in that goal, and it knows how much progress you're making. And it keeps this ratio of effort to progress. So if you're making really good progress for a very little effort, that feels great, right? We have this in our mind, this idea that orgasm is supposed to take a certain amount and a certain kind of effort, and if it takes too much, we start to get impatient and frustrated. And is that impatience and frustrating hitting the brakes, or is it hitting the gas?
And embarrassed.
We start thinking about, oh, is our partner getting bored?
Right.
Are they worried that we're doing it wrong? Is our body broken?
Right.
All this sort of
Are they not doing good enough for us?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So when you change that goal, let go of the idea that there's a right or a wrong way to experience orgasm, all there is pleasure. You can never go wrong. And if it takes half an hour to get to orgasm, that's a half an hour of pleasure.
Right.
If it takes 10 minutes, that's 10 minutes of pleasure, and that's also great.
Right.
And it turns out the longer you take to get to orgasm, usually the bigger, higher quality the orgasmic experience is.
And the more. The multiples.
They can continue on for longer, yes.
That's the best.
One of the great things about living in a female body is we don't have a point of ejaculatory inevitability, a point of no return. Once we get to orgasm, we can go back to orgasm, we can hover at orgasm, have extended multiple orgasms more easily than men can.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Okay, this is from Amelia, who has worked with Emily before. I've heard you talk about a concept called the dirty normal.
Oh, yeah.
The dirty normal. Can you define this for me?
So I came up with the phrase dirty normal it has two functions, obviously. There's the idea that all of us have a sexuality that lives inside our bodies. Every single one of us walking around on planet Earth has a set of genitals and a mechanism in our brain, and they produce fluids, and they have an aroma, and people have all sorts of moral opinions about those things, so it's dirty by every definition, and that is normal. all that stuff that you have going on, if you can just sort of integrate the idea that like what we've culturally called dirty, yep, that's a part of me. I have that.
So in other words, so dirty didn't mean like a sin. You're talking more about a body reactions, aroma, perspiration, whatever that. That's interesting. Being a Catholic girl, I thought we were getting into dirty, bad girls.
But it means that too, because when you have those sensations in your body, how do you feel about those sensations? So there's a thing called meta emotions. There's how you feel, and then there's how you feel about how you feel. So if you have the sensations in your body and you're like, oh, I like those sensations, that's a lot of fun. Or you could have those sensations and be like, I'm really worried about the fact that I have these sensations.
That's great. Nancy R. I'm on an SSRI for depression. It's way harder to climax. Any tips to bring back my big O?
Reduction in both sexual desire and orgasm with SSRIs is a very common side effect. What serotonin does, it's the happy satisfaction chemical. It's the after Thanksgiving dinner chemical where you're just like, yep, I'm good, I'm done, I don't need anything else, I'm all set. So why would your body want sex if it's fully satisfied? So one solution is to get on a different kind of antidepressant, like dopamine agonist instead, like Wellbutrin. And the other solution is to let orgasm take a lot of time. Let it take half an hour and use a higher intensity of stimulation. I'm an advocate of vibrator use, particularly when there are SSRIs involved, because when you have a lower sensitivity of stimulation, which is what SSRIs give you, you need a higher intensity to counterbalance that.
Okay, this is from Melinda. My husband and I both work a lot. When we get home, we're exhausted. Before you know it, I haven't had sex in months. How do we get out of this funk?
John Gottman has talked about research that shows that there are two qualities that distinguish couples who sustain a sexually satisfying connection over multiple decades. Those two things are they have a strong friendship at the foundation of their relationship, and second, they prioritize sex. There's so many things we can be doing with our time. We've got work, we've got kids, we've got Game of Thrones to watch, we have all the friends to hang out with and family to know. And then you also want to have some sex. You have to partition off a little window of time where the only thing you're going to be doing is putting your body in intimate contact with your partner's body. It takes a decision to do that. You decide that it's important enough to your relationship that you're going to carve out this time for it, and you put your body in the bed or wherever with your partner where you both feel safe and trusting and affectionate, and you see what happens when you touch each other. A lot of the times what happens is both of your bodies are like, this is a really good idea, we should maybe do this more often. Sometimes what happens if you're that exhausted, you put your body in the bed and your skin against your partner's, and what happens is you fall asleep because you're so sleep deprived. But that's okay too. That means really what you need to be doing is getting more sleep.
So you're saying make some time for it.
Prioritize it.
This is from Leona. What happens to make you wake up one day and just not want anything to do sexually with the person you supposedly love? Like, boom, it's gone. Does that happen?
Oh yeah.
One day? Must take a while.
It can feel like one day is just gone, and that doesn't mean it's gone forever. What it means is that the context has shifted. Can we talk about rat brain research just a little bit?
Love rat brain.
Okay, so there's this research they've done. They put a little probe in the nucleus accumbens of the rat, and when you zap the front of the nucleus accumbens, the rat does, ooh, what's this? Curious approach behaviors. And when you zap the back, it goes, ah, what the heck is that? Which is avoidance behavior. When you put that rat in a really relaxed, calm, home-like environment, like a dark room that smells like his mother, you zap the front of his nucleus accumbens and he goes, ooh, what's that? And you zap the back and he goes, ooh, what's that? In a really good state of mind, almost any stimulation will be interpreted as something to be approached with curiosity and desire and interest. But then you put that same rat into a room that's very bright and noisy and stressed and threatening for that rat, and you zap the front of the nucleus accumbens and he goes, what the heck is that? In a wrong, stressed out, uncomfortable, untrusting, unsafe environment, almost anything can be interpreted as something to be avoided and a potential threat. So it really has to do with the ways the relationship shapes the context in which your brain is interpreting sensations. We've all experienced this with tickling, right? So when you're in a sexy, fun, groovy state of mind and your certain special someone starts tickling you, that can feel good. And if you're in a stressed out, if you're really frustrated and angry with your partner and they start to tickle you,
Oh yeah, you want to kill them.
Yeah, you want to punch them in the face. I was talking to a BDSM group one time, a bondage, domination, and sadomasochism group, and I asked that question, and a pro-dom raised her hand and said, I would feel stabby, Emily, if someone did that to me. Okay. So you want to not tickle somebody when they're pissed off.
Right.
So what happens is the relationship changes. It changes the way your brain interprets the world, which changes why would you be interested in doing something so intimate when your whole brain is in this like stressed out, uncomfortable state of mind.
This is from Jamie. My husband is more sexually satisfied than I am, based on how frequently he orgasms. How can I retake charge to get what I need?
Yes. So orgasm doesn't necessarily mean sexual satisfaction. So Jamie, if orgasm equity is what you are looking for in your relationship, make a rule that he's not allowed to have an orgasm unless you also have an orgasm. That is a perfectly legitimate rule to have in a relationship. It's totally fair to say, if I don't have an orgasm, neither do you. That rule is not going to work for every relationship. I have a lot of friends for whom orgasm is like really effortful and time-consuming and not necessarily worth how much work it takes, and they really love the pleasure that comes with other sexual things, and they don't want an orgasm every time, and it's okay with them if it's not an equal number.
Right.
But if what you want in your relationship is orgasm equality, make a rule. He doesn't get to come until you do.
This is from Chrissy. How can I introduce sex toys into the bedroom without scaring my husband?
Yeah.
How can it start? Does your book include this?
Yes. So there's a whole page specifically on sex toys. The reason partners are sometimes intimidated by the idea of sex toys is because they think there is some equivalence between a sex toy and them as a partner. They're thinking about what the sex toy can do that they can't, which is, you know, oscillate at 1,000 RPMs, which no human body can do, and that's fine. So they feel intimidated because the sex toy can do something they can do. So I often recommend that people begin identifying all the things their partner can do that the sex toy can't. So there was research that was published last year that showed that the best predictor of sexual satisfaction is not what people do in bed, it's not how orgasmic they are, it's how long they cuddle after sex. So in terms of the single best predictor of sexual satisfaction, vibrator, not going to cuddle you after sex. They can't make eye contact with you. They can't caress your face. They can't kiss you. Sex toys can't do. All they can do is vibrate. And that's great. That's useful.
That's what you bought them for.
Right. But all it does is this one little sort of adjunct on top of all the things that your partner is bringing to the table.
Right. Oh.
Praise.
That's
Make
great.
your partner feel like a superhero.
Now, what is the
one.
name of this book so that she can get that?
Oh, the title of my book is Come As You Are.
Come As You Are, okay.
And it's in the orgasm chapter.
Okay, there you go. This is from Twitter. Her Sweet Sweat. What makes female sexuality so much more intricate than male sexuality?
I'm actually not convinced that female sexuality is more intricate. What it is, so male and female bodies, male and female brains are made of all the same parts. They're just organized in slightly different ways. We also happen to live in a culture that treats men as the default, so we compare women's sexuality to men's, and the ways that women are not the same as men, we feel like they're a little bit broken. If we used women's sexuality as the default instead, then we'd look at men's sexuality and be like, isn't that sort of weird, and why are men, But if we take men's and every individual's sexuality on its own terms and say people are just different from each other, then we'll recognize that it is not so much that women are more intricate than men, it's that people vary from each other tremendously. And there is no right or wrong way, there's only, is there pleasure, is there full consent, then you are doing it right.
Simone wants to know, how can I increase my desire to have sex? I want to be having sex every night.
Okay, so have sex every night. So desire is not a thing that necessarily has to happen spontaneously. Wanting to have sex intellectually and being like, I want to put my body in the bed and do the thing, that is desire. There is also the urge, the craving, and that emerges in response to pleasure. It doesn't make sense to want sex if you don't like the sex you are having. So make sure that you're focusing on the pleasure, and if you want to have sex every night, do things that feel pleasurable every single night, and then the next night you're going to want to put your body back there again. Increase pleasure.
That's very good. This is from Tracy. I have a fulfilling sex life, but I don't orgasm from sex, and I don't orgasm every time. I have a sexual experience. My boyfriend doesn't understand how I can call this fulfilling, but I still really enjoy it all. Is this weird?
No, it's extremely common. So again, only about 1/3 of women are reliably orgasmic from vaginal penetration alone. The remaining 2/3 are sometimes, rarely, or never orgasmic from penetration. Many women, there's a thing called the orgasm gap, which is the men have more orgasms than women do in heterosexual sex. And for some women, that's not okay. And for other women, like in this case, Tracy, that's just what it's like for you. I had a couple argue about this in front of me, and the woman who was less orgasmic than her partner said, so if I only had one slice of pizza and I said I was full, would you think that I was lying and that I actually wanted more pizza but wasn't letting myself? Like, that's one piece of pizza is enough. That's fine. But the guy's argument in response was, if I cook you a really special pizza and you only eat one slice,
I feel bad.
Maybe you don't like the pizza and you're just, the thing is, culturally we've constructed men's sexuality so that it's like that game at the amusement park, at the fair with the strength tester and you hit the ding and you're a man because you hit the bell. So yeah, unfortunately a lot of men feel like their partner's orgasm is proof that they are good human beings, and we just need to believe our partners when they say that's not necessarily true.
You know what's interesting is there's no discussion here about faking sex. So I'm wondering, is that pretty much over?
Oh God, no.
No? I was wondering if maybe the women's movement liberated women to say, I want it, I need it, how do I get it?
I think actually there's a little bit of an ironic effect there, because women's liberation and feminism have made sexuality more available to women. There's more pressure for them to perform and to want sex more often and to have all the orgasms. I work with these very high achieving, driven students who feel like they should get all the competitive internships and get very high grades and also be multiply orgasmic. And like, that's a lot of pressure. And so they judge themselves when they can't perform up to that standard. So, which is why I'm so glad to see what I think is happening is that people are getting better at separating what's true for them from what they've been told is supposed to be true.
I just thought this was fabulous.
Thank you.
I learned a lot, and I know that everybody got their questions answered, and there's a lot more. Do you have a website in case we have more questions?
Sure. My blog is thedirtynormal.com.
There you go. So if you have any extra questions for Emily, type it in, and hopefully you'll get your answer. But I think you should look at this a couple of times. There's a lot of stuff here that I think is very helpful. I really loved having you. You're really an expert. I so enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.